Welcome back to She Reaches, the podcast from SSPI Wise, where we spotlight the incredible women shaping the future of the space industry. SSPI Wise is a global initiative of space and satellite professionals, aiming to elevate those who identify as women within the industry. I'm your host, Tanveer Pujara, and today I'm thrilled to be speaking with Kirsten Bartok Touw, a trailblazing investor. Kirsten is the co-founder of New Vista Capital, an early-stage venture firm fueling breakthroughs in space, aerospace, and defense technology. From co-founding XOJET and AirFinance to advising the US Department of Defense, serving on multiple boards, and shaping strategy for leading aerospace companies, Kirsten's career has been defined by bold moves and big wins. With a BA from University of Pennsylvania and an MBA from Stanford, she's now channeling her expertise and network into backing the innovators who will define the future of space. Welcome, Kirsten.
Great to meet you, Tanveer. So happy to be here.
Thank you for coming on the show, and we're excited to dive straight into our conversation. So I want to just take it back right from the start. What led you to this career in aerospace and ultimately investing?
You know, it's funny. I think it's so hard for us to determine where we'll be long term. And there's a lot of opportunity and circumstance which ended up here. I think most importantly, how I grew up was that I didn't think that there were any limitations. So it wasn't and I grew up in a small town in Maine. It was a pretty normal American upbringing. But we never talked about what you could or couldn't do. It wasn't part of our nomenclature. And I think that that has pervaded kind of everything else in life. Like, it's not my first thought to say, oh, I shouldn't be doing that, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not capable enough, or I'm a woman. And I think that that has been helpful in everything we try. And it is, we'll talk, I'm sure, further, that confidence and that knowledge of your own personal capability and how you attack things that seem daunting is just, kind of that reps you build up just as you're working on the gym over years. But it was that fundamental, just not believing there are any limitations.
I love that. I love that I mean, a lot of people say, I had a struggle. I couldn't get in, I couldn't get into the industry that I dreamed of being in. And it's really nice that you have this upbringing of, no one told you no, which is great. And I love that. And you had the family support around you as well.
We did. And I wouldn't say, I think we talk about resilience and determination. I would say that, there are other parts where, yes, my family got divorced at 10. And yes, taking up a lot of it, raising yourself, but it wasn't, that all adds to who you are later. Your self-reliance, your belief that you can accomplish things, your confidence early in your abilities, that if you set your mind to it, you can, get straight A's or whatever it is. And I think, so to your point, which is a good one, it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine. It was, a lot of determination, but that built up that resilient personality and that internal confidence. Like, okay, I may not know how to do this, but I have the capabilities to go figure out how to do it. And I often use an acronym, which I assume is that don't look at, see how large the mountain is you're trying to climb. Just kind of look ahead of you and think about the number of steps to here, break it up in parts. Because oftentimes we wouldn't try things if we realized how large it was or how hard it was or how much we had to do. But break it up in parts and that seem achievable. And then that's the best way to accomplish great things.
That's really great advice. So did you have a particular moment along your academic path or career at the start that you were like, this is what I want to do? Or was this always something that was within you that you were like, yes, I want to be in the space industry?
Someone I was listening to a founder of Astroforge talk about how his youth was destroyed by watching the Challenger and Sally Ride blow up in space. And it actually was and I think it wasn't a large part of my future of how I thought about the world. I always like to be challenged, and I always like to be working on hard things. And I actually started my career in finance. So after college, went to Goldman Sachs and loved finance, loved the macro parts, working on deals, and ended up at Stanford Business School. And there was a great capability. I remember two of my classmates and colleagues left after our first year to start up a rocket ship, high flying startup. And that really gave everyone in our class confidence. Oh, Kleiner Perkins will fund something we do. We're not too young. We're not too early. And as I mentioned earlier, each of those steps I ended up going into venture right out of business school. So really, and it was the internet boom. Everything was happening around, mobility and the internet and what we could build on it and the software stacks. And I always joke, none of us knew how long that was going to take. It would never have imagined us that would have taken 20 years to get to really, ubiquitous grocery delivery, which we're not even there yet. But that was also a good lesson of like how things take time. They don't happen immediately. You're building, and it's a constant. And you can't be too early in your investments either. Because you have to know how the pace at which that infrastructure in tech is going to build up. And it's so valuable to space as well and how we think about it. That there is a software, a stack that you're building on top of what other people have accomplished and what is the next task that can be built out. But back to aerospace and defense, it was fortuitous for me. I got into the aerospace side first, and then ended up leaning into the space side later. Aerospace as an entrepreneur, ended up starting a company called XOJET and building that up. And then we sold to TPG and then started more on the aerospace DoD side. And then it was really kind of mid to 2015s when SpaceX was out there talking about reusable launch. How do we get access to space? And then watching that build upon each other. I mean, it is still the most exciting company anyone in our globally has ever seen and what they've been able to accomplish. And I often talk about in SpaceX we talk about reusable launch, what they've been able to accomplish in terms of getting that cost of launch per kilogram down. But the one thing that we're really focused on domestically is what SpaceX and the engineering have been able to do to what used to be called exquisite products. The US as a country was always really good at creating these exquisite, highly expensive, bespoke products. The energy needed to be made by hand. They were super complicated. And the next generation of where I think SpaceX is leading us to is really this low cost. How do you re-engineer something that we know how to do, but you re-engineering it to be made largely by machines and manufactured using advanced manufacturing technologies? And that's where we all need to get to kind of build this ecosystem that we want up in space.
Mm-hmm. So taking it back to, when you've left Stanford and you did business, and then you said you almost immediately went into investing. What would you say was what were you most strong at in terms of, was it the business side, was it the investing side, or was it the space side? And did you pick up the knowledge of the space industry, aerospace, as you went along?
I think that's right. I think when you come out of business school, you typically are a generalist. And then you have to determine where you're going to focus to become an expert, because to be good at any of these businesses, it is really hard to be a generalist. So over time, as I saw the opportunity, and I will laugh at people, I could have been going to the gym, and instead I was a geek at home reading all these articles about how people were building things or what the next level technologies or research reports or academic reports or science. And you had to, I think when you're passionate about something and you're trying to get up to speed, you do often sacrifice. And to prove yourself to the industry, you have to go do that learning independently on your own. And I feel so blessed that we live in a world today where so much, when I started my career, we didn't have access to everything that is available, the knowledge and learning that YouTube, you can relearn everything on, it is available today out there. So if you're self-motivated and you want to get into an area, I've talked to a bunch of people who wanted to get into space as well. And, you'll hear stories about people having to intern and volunteer, and they're super accomplished professionals. But to make that switch from, let's say, aerospace or some other area to prove themselves worthy, they had to do an internship, which turned into a real job. But it's what happens in these emerging areas that are moving so quickly. They will give you an opportunity, but you really have to prove yourself. And if you don't contribute because they're small companies, it is an up and out, unlike some of those big companies, which will keep you around for longer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, nice. So you left business, you left Stanford and you went into business, and then you built New Vista Capital soon after, or what was the transition to your latest role?
Sure. I had built a couple companies in between there. So it started in venture and then had left to start a company called XOJET, which we sold to TPG. Then I left there and worked at a large global aerospace company. and we merged that with Textron. And then after that, I actually started a credit fund. And that was a little bit where we started to look at SpaceX, the investing, what the government was supporting. And then mid kind of 2015, 16, 17, started to recognize these changes going on in space and aerospace that were really bringing mainstream and would allow these sectors to be investable, where you could make venture capital returns. Because that was largely the difference historically. Space was an incredibly interesting area, but it wasn't where you could do commercial success historically. It wasn't where you were going to make tech-like returns to be a top quartile fund. Where in the last, with the advent of reusable launch and space getting more proliferated and smaller countries or companies being able to access space and build service providers, especially as we've been able to do in LEO, that's really been the game changer, which has allowed it to be investable from a venture perspective. And that probably started occurring, let's say, 17, 18, 19, as you saw the ecosystem and the proliferation of broader companies start to build out. Today, it's such a fascinating time. I mean, we had all been, the advent of the U.S. Forming a Space Force, bringing it out of the Air Force, which it was a part of, adding that as a component. Globally, you've got this Earth observation. How do we use space? The ability to build up the proliferated, satellite systems within LEO. And now we have even a greater movement. NATO is kind of realizing that they also need to get in the space game from a global perspective. And you've got this Golden Dome attempt that President Trump is interested in building. So an Iron Dome, which was largely, a space situational awareness system. So I think we're to some extent entering the golden age of space build out and investing, where we see both capital going into the early stage and the opportunity to make money on the later stage as well.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned working with Department of Defense. What's that been like? Obviously, it was an advisory role, wasn't it? What was it like?
I think I moved out from Silicon Valley to DC in 2019, the Bay Area. And it was interesting it's been an honor to be able to work with such people who've dedicated their careers and their lives to keeping our country safe. And, you probably see this, you work in the commercial world, and sometimes you aren't mission aligned. You're out there even in Silicon Valley, to make money, and to be in DC, where the conversation now is about how do we make our country stronger? How do we make sure Western civilization and liberal democracies are able to excel and still be dominant in the world instead of being taken over by more dogmatic leaders? That is a motivator every day. And I'm honored that I get to work with the great people over at the DoD who are so mission aligned. And it's been a wonderful learning. Like, we joke for them for a lot of times that they leave. It's a little bit of a mini MBA, but it's an ecosystem. We spend so much time learning from them about their programs, how they're built, what the priorities are, how you work with the Department of Defense and the Space Force. What are the channels, and how do you build that trust internally? And then where is the place where the opportunities exist the most? And it is highly different and it is incomparable to kind of the worlds we saw in the commercial world, how you sold SaaS or how you sold, telecommunication systems. So it really does require a mind shift change and a new kind of mapping of the ecosystem.
And I guess it goes back to what you mentioned about resilience, right? It's adaptability, resilience over the years. How do you feel that you've adapted to the ever-changing, sector, which is the, space?
I was at a talk recently, did a report with General Berger, who was the commandant of the Marine Corps for many years. And he now is, again, working on defense tech and resilience. And one of the things he was giving a lecture about how the skill for the next generation is change. We have to be good at adapting to change and recognizing what that is and not being kind of stuck with what we're doing. And it's, if you can, as an individual, adapt and be ahead of it, then you will have a very good chance of succeeding and not wanting to live in a world of, a stasis. Sorry. So I thrive in change. I thrive in dynamic environments. I enjoy them. I enjoy the constant learning. So sometimes you just find a good fit between the area that you focused on, how fast it's moving, and what you're and I talk a lot about internal cadence. Like, don't fight your internal cadence, because that also has a big influence on, you should find a job that is a good fit for how you like to organize your day and how chaotic you like your day. And you'll be much more successful if you kind of find a match between those two things. So for me, the constant learning, the venture, the being out there, the having to talk to a lot of people, to source deals, to work with your companies, to be supportive, work on a high confluence of many different things, and you're always learning, has been something that fits well with kind of my internal cadence.
Mm-hmm. And just looking at your LinkedIn bio, I mean, you've done incredible things. You've had an amazing career, and it looks like very much a zigzag career. Like you've done side steps, you've done upward moves, you've done side steps. And I think you have spoken previously about how it is important to have a wide variety of experience. How necessary do you think that is in the job that you're doing today, investing?
I think it's absolutely necessary, because every different experience, I was talking to someone, provides you a lens in which to see things. And so much of the value we bring as to entrepreneurs, as venture capitalists, is that trend recognition, helping them see around corners, helping them avoid mistakes. And, the work I did in China, the work I did in Russia, the work I did in a fast growing OEM, building XOJET, they all feed into having empathy and understanding for what an entrepreneur is going through, and then helping them see around experience of what they need to do next. So again, the interesting thing about a venture capitalist is you're an investor, but because you're always a minority investor, the entrepreneur only needs to take as much or as little as they want to, and they will kind of hear voices. So it's important to have that match of like, look, and I always like to people, we are never a whole. So we as an individual, me as a person, or an entrepreneur, CEO, founder as a person, should always be filling in their voids, figuring out what they can take from other people from a learning perspective, because it's the faster we get to that knowledge, the more effective we will be, and the better we'll be at building, whether it's a venture capital firm or whether it's a space startup. It's the same.
So when you meet a founder, then what qualities or signals tell you that they're the ones that are really that are going to be successful? Do you get a gut feeling, or what is it about them that you look for?
I think you're exactly right. It is a gut feeling, but it's based upon years and years of data, and also seeing successful entrepreneurs and what has been required of them to be successful. One of the key things I advise to everyone, it is to have worked in a startup, to go have the opportunity to work with a high potential and outstanding leader, because what you will learn in that, observing them, the cultures they build up, how fastly they move, that again will set the inner tone if you want to go out and be a founder. It is almost virtually impossible to go from, let's say, a large company to founding a new company. It is virtually about to go to D from D to DOD to founding a new company. You haven't watched it. You haven't been on the inside. You don't understand how things are built. And the other odd part, there is a specific way in which Silicon Valley companies are built. So we kind of use that as an overarching umbrella for successful tech startups. And that's whether you're in Mumbai, whether you're in Chester, or whether you're in, Austin. But you have to somewhat fit into that mold if you want to kind of be the high-performing, fast-moving company that is going to succeed, because there has been a mold built over time. There's a rate at which you grow and that you excel to achieve that momentum. And once you lose momentum, it is very difficult to raise venture capital after that, because it is that first check of, oh, you could have learned something, but it's really hard to restart something. It's much easier actually to say, okay, we've done the best we can here. Let's go apply and do something new at what we learned over here. People will give you credit for that. They won't necessarily give you credit that this endeavor, this product will work after you've lost momentum.
Mm-hmm. And can you share a time when you've made an investment that maybe someone else has overlooked? And what was it that stood out?
I think we all do. And there is the herd mentality, but then there's also the areas in which you bring in opportunities and you uniquely see things because of your expertise where their gaps are. And then it's helping that entrepreneur kind of think big, because oftentimes in a startup, you'll come with a small, narrow defined problem. And then you'll think about, how do we expand that? Because you have to expand that and create other markets to be to become bigger. But I would say it's more in the aerospace side. There are so few people. Space has become more exciting. Defense has become more exciting. But the fundamentals of aerospace, what that market is, how that's filled, that has been something that we still lack many investors who understand fundamentally how to build and where the opportunities are. So probably more in that area.
So I'm guessing you pulled all the specialists together under your company.
There's many more out there, but we have brought them all together. We often talk about, well, we're more of a society of fellows than we are, let's say, a venture capital firm. And we always think about, okay, is this going to make us 100 times our money? Is this going to be outsized returns? But we are geeks at heart. I mean, we love learning. We spend our weekends studying this stuff. We share articles constantly. And I think we feed off of each other in all that passion about what is being built and what the next generation looks like of capabilities up there. So again, if you've heard Tanveer the same things, you have to be passionate about the industry you're in, because you're going to spend many more than 40 to 60 hours a week if you want to be successful. You have to have an underlying personal, interest and love of it.
Yeah, my parents always tell me that. They're like, if you want to be successful, you're working 8 days a week. Literally, yeah. That's what it is. So yeah, that's something that's always stuck with me. And I think that's what a lot of incredible guests that I've had on the show and you as well have basically said. You're voicing that same philosophy that is, you've got to work hard if you want to get, to the top and be successful. So yeah, really, really, really great advice. You've kind of answered my next question, but what's a typical day like for you at New Vista Capital?
I think it's crazy whether... It depends on whether I'm in the office or out of the office. When I'm in the office lately, I am bound by that. I wish there were more hours in every day, so that you're scheduled back to back. Everyone has time and you're constant learning. So we're happy to have those meetings, meet those new people, meet those young kids out there talking about new ideas, or that entrepreneur that could come in and be your mentor to a company you're working with. But I just keep thinking how I just want more time in every day. And, I look forward to weekends because then there's time to catch up and do that reading. So, or other times we're out there working in the industry, because how we work with other VCs, we work with entrepreneurs, you're constantly out meeting. It is a tough business to scale, because both from the company side as well from the helping the companies become effective is still built on personal relationships. So, and you can only scale that so much because they are true, they are real, and there's something that you can't do. You can't outsource that. So that is, and the other thing is, and I talk about this from being a good VC, or sometimes when you're in a scientific development, you're constantly thinking and taking all the pieces of information that you're getting, and you're getting such disparate ones. But then at some point you come to this kind of awakening or understanding where you're like, oh, that's what that all is going to. That was what that meant. And it's especially interesting when you see an entrepreneur come and pitch to you an idea, and you'll have had 5 different ideas which bring that one. And you're like, oh my God, now I get it. I didn't get it before, but you're kind of bringing these. And that's when you have some of the greatest opportunities and rewards. And just that intellectual stimulation and the opportunity to build something that is needed is a motivator too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I guess you hear so many pitches in your day-to-day job. How do you say no? How do you choose when you're not quite sure about something and it's kind of on par with someone else, another great startup? How do you say no?
I think we approach it, and we were just talking about this actually, a little differently. One, with great respect. There's a lot of VCs who will just say, oh, you don't have enough traction for us. Oh, we need a little more, industry feedback. We really try to be clear on where we think the deficits were, about, being able to pitch with a little bit more vision rather than tactical, or to that the way someone is approaching this is going to make them struggle to fundraise, or, oh, your product's just a little, if you adjust it this way, it could be a better fit. Or, sometimes, which is the other hard one, it's just you're in a really competitive space and we didn't see anything. But we respect is, back to the Teddy Roosevelt comment, these are the people in the arena. They deserve the respect. They're out there fighting every day. And even if we turn someone down, we just want them to be successful and be better. So we always try to leave them better than we found them. It doesn't always work that way. The no's are the hardest things. And even when there's a bunch of companies we look at in our sector that we think are amazing. They're incredible. They're going to make an important industry contribution, but they probably aren't going to make tech-like returns. And those are the hardest ones to turn down an entrepreneur, because you really want to be encouraging, you want to help them, but they aren't a good fit for a venture capital portfolio, given the type of returns we need to make.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so just moving on now to talk about, gender representation in both industries, investing and the space industry, two very much traditionally male-dominated industries. Have you ever felt held back in your own capacity as an investor in the industry? And if so, how did you overcome that?
I think sometimes it's daunting to walk in rooms where you may be one of two females in a group of 20. You need to get used to that. So I oftentimes don't see it now and don't realize it, but it is. I remember going back, and when we took a SPAC public a few years ago, and I started in banking 25 years ago, and there seemed fewer women still in those pictures than there were early on. So it is. I think we see more and more on the science side and more in the leadership side today, certainly in the large industrial companies. So I am more positive about it. But it, again, is also about that mentoring. We need to do more about mentoring women. When you can't get ahead in any business unless you have an advocate for you. And sometimes those advocates are hard to build, that mentor-mentee relationship, if it's not in the same, it can get uncomfortable. So I talk a lot about us women gathering together, creating an old girl network, trying to support each other. And I would say, I think the greatest thing that I've seen is that most women I know are positive advocates. They used to talk about how women were backstabbing or fighting. I have never really seen that in my career, and I've been so blessed. But where I've seen is we need to all help each other so that we can get to a place where we're not the minority in a room, that we're one of that there's more equal distribution of us in the markets.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we set up this, this podcast, was to elevate women, to shout about all the amazing things that women are doing in this industry. And it's really nice that every guest that we've had on this podcast only has good things to say about other women. So it's really, really nice to see. I'd love to see more of it. And I'd love to not have two investors out of, 10 men in a room. But hopefully this is changing, and people like yourself are changing things, which is really great.
And the work you're doing. So getting the stories out, helping us talk, build that network, because it's so important, get some visibility.
100%.
So thank you for your work too.
Thank you. In terms of advice then, what advice would you give to young women or anyone hoping to build a career in investing, and in particular in the space industry?
I think the biggest one is don't be afraid. We women look in and say, oh, am I capable of doing that job? Have I done it before? We're often afraid to cold call. That's another thing I've learned over time. Reach out to someone who you think is amazing, who was former head of the FAA, or recently, they have more time, they're willing. So it's that removal of fear, or even if you do have that fear, just put it over here, get away with it, and go do it. Because what we have seen, and whether you're male or female, for all of us, is that the more you lean in, the more you try, the more, and you go sometimes further than what you think you're capable of or what you'll get a positive, give it a try. Hard work pays off, and that matters. Mm-hmm. Perseverance, diligence, determination, all of that pays off.
100%. And as a woman, how have you managed your sort of work-life balance throughout your career?
It's a great, I think the advent, because I was an entrepreneur, I had a little more flexibility. And in my last company, AirFinance, was a distributed workplace. Because we wanted the best people, we hired people and said, okay, you can live there and stay there. And we worked very hard to be in touch and work together. But it allowed me to work from home as well. My hours had to be different. You had to often work weekends. You didn't know if you were on a call at 10 or 11 at night, because what we were doing was global. Mm-hmm. But if you needed to go take your child to the doctor, or, be there to cook dinner, you could do that. And that, I do believe that being an entrepreneur, being able to kind of set your own schedule, being able to work home, especially in those child rearing years, is really, really valuable. And it's also, I'd say this, having a network wherever you go, if you can live near your parents for their support, if you can live near an ecosystem of families so that you can have everyone be a village. But raising kids and being in an intense job is pretty hard. So my other advice is have one. I think you can be great at your job and a great mom sometimes, and I have more than one. You definitely go in feeling like you're not doing great in everything you want to, because there's just too much, but it is rewarding in all aspects. And again, you can start. I started late having kids, so I had really built a career and had an establishment. There are other people. I'm watching a lot of people in my military friends who started having kids early, and now they're empty nesters, and they are, still young and enjoying life, and it's awesome to watch. So.
I think both ways are great. I mean, like you said, you're providing your children with the foundation of this amazing career you've had, before they were born. I'm not sure how old they are, but I'm guessing you've managed to convince them or, show them the wonderful world of space. I'm guessing, are they interested like their mom or what are they interested in?
We love space. I keep telling them how awesome it is. And I hope actually, in some sense, people lean into their what their parents do. I hope my kids don't lean out, because I keep telling them how amazing this is. I'm like, why don't you all want to do this? So we'll see. They seem to be more humanities focused right now than I would like them on the science side. But I feel what I have been able to do is mentor a lot of close friends' kids who are interested, who are getting degrees in this area and want jobs. And it's just, I feel they're so blessed. What an exciting time to be at the entry point of an industry that is going to go through tremendous change and is going to reward. I think that's one of the best things that we have today is you don't have to go through a hierarchical system anymore to get rewarded for your hard work and good ideas. That today can be done. You can work hard and do really awesome things at very young ages. And that's
100%.
That's exciting and motivating.
Especially with places like Silicon Valley, where you feel like, I go there quite a lot. I've got family there, and you literally feel when you go there that you can do anything. And that's the best thing. I mean, a lot of these amazing startups and ideas are from there. And that's giving that, that impetus that people can do anything no matter what age they are, which is really good.
I totally agree. You're absolutely right. And hopefully, we've had that grow into other areas, that other tech ecosystems, whether it's London or El Segundo or Austin, are seeing that as well. That approach, right?
So when you're not working, what do you like to do for fun? I know you said you're catching up on work at the weekends, but what non-work activities do you like doing?
Oddly, I actually think my work ones are fun. So, whether you're going out, so I do spend a lot of my time. It would be fun to go see a launch facility or that stuff you're geeky about. So I do love it. Right now, I still like to travel the world. I always enjoy seeing new places and understanding new cultures. So for me, that is something that I'll never forget. And I don't read as much. I look forward. So now I do more books on tape. So unfortunately, but I always, again, it's interesting how as you get older, sometimes your reading leans more into nonfiction. As when you're younger, at 22, I thought I knew everything or could figure everything out. Now at the age you're at, we're like, oh, I just want to learn more. I missed that out. I want to understand that. So, it's that constant building up of what are you missing out on? How do you accumulate it? So make yourself better. It's fun though. And I think that's I feel blessed that I enjoy life, that I'm passionate about it, that I work with amazing people that inspire me every day. And I hope that other people get the opportunity to love what they do, be passionate about what they do, and be inspired by the people around them.
And you're in such an exciting industry as well. Like you said, it's ever changing. What do you hope to see in the next 10 years in this industry? What's exciting you the most right now, and where do you see it going?
Look, I think we still are at the point where you go to space, you send that data back through a ground station, and then it goes someplace else to process it. The next level of where we're going to be is be able to maneuver things, be able to process things in space, and then be able to dynamically send that back to the end user as data in the format that they can use. And, whether we're 3 or 5 or 7 years out from a phase of that, it's a good question. But I always joke, if we're talking about baseball, we are in the early stages of the first inning. So there's another 6 innings that are going to be so exciting to build out. And I remember that from the internet. I can have that requisite of what it looked like, in 99 versus what it looks like in 2000. And space is going to be very similar. So.
Of course, I remember dial-up as well. The pain trying to do internet homework, my homework, trying to dial up to the internet.
Yeah. No, the fact that that you're going to get to a space where you don't have GPS or the bad news is we have no privacy left, right? Everyone, or you can be seen from space, access everywhere. There will be no opacity anymore with
it's scary. It is scary. Okay. And my final question, which I like to ask all my guests on the podcast, is if you could put one message in a capsule for the next generation of women in space, what would it say?
Well, that's a great question. I would say, I think that both you're good enough and that you deserve to be there. I think so many people live in an imposter scenario, and they're not good enough. And it's a great motivator, right? Because if we thought we were good enough, maybe I wouldn't spend the entire weekend studying about the next, next generation type of engines or propulsion. But it is also saying that you're okay and you're doing enough and that you do fit in. And I've been lucky to feel that broadly in life, but even that is a motivator and certainly gives one the confidence to be able to create the next things. Because if you know you're good enough, then you know you're good enough to go build that. You know you're on par with other people. And I think that will lead us to, unlocking, additional innovations and treasures in the future. So I guess that would be it.
Great. Well, that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure having you on our podcast.
Great to meet you. Thank you for what you're doing. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Kirsten.